Well, first I'm looking at the terror before we explain the images.
So you're saying like they would do it to get like political goals?
To get a political goal. For some reason, the regular political functions did not work. And in times of war, there's no peace conference, there's no surrender, and they can't win the war on the battlefield. So terror will get some other outcome. That's exactly what terrorism is. Terrorism is a political act to get a certain political end. And the whole thing is, by achieving terror, you convince civilians your government won't protect you. So it won't protect you from random attacks by German rigid airships called Zeppelins. This is a London suburb where hit by a bomb. Random houses would be hit, and that is their home destroyed. Or, here's 1918, starvation in Germany. And that's coming up to a soup kitchen. It's hard to tell, but what happened is the soup, they're just about out. Because the Allies did a starvation blockade. Starvation affects everybody differently, every family differently. That's what it is. It's a soup kitchen. And the point is, if the government can't protect you and your family, it's trying to get people to do what? Maybe ultimately revolt, but at least change the government. But maybe in the long run, revolt. In Germany, because of the starvation blockade, there are going to be food riots. 1916, but really bad in 1918. Then the Navy just finally mutinied. France, there'll be food riots. Britain, there'll be food riots. Russia, really big food riots that would turn into what? In fact, we have a picture of this. This is actually not the Bolsheviks. This is the first of two rebellions. The first one was in March. And there are soldiers mutinying, and there are people marching in the streets of Petrograd. I think I mentioned this before. If I didn't, St. Petersburg is the capital. What's the capital of the Russian Empire? But that's a German name, Petersburg. So they took Petrograd. That's a Russian name. When I was your age, it was Leningrad. Stalingrad is Volgograd today. And then it went back to St. Petersburg after communism. And so, that's the goal of terror, to get a political action. And so the point is to breed terror, to destabilize the government, to make people feel like they're not protected. And remember, terror could come a lot of different ways. It could become from bombing to starvation, to actual terrorist attacks within your country. And here's the thing. What makes terrorism terror? So absolutely right. We took a quiz. What makes it? Anyone know?
You don't know.
Oh, because you have that appointment.
You don't know when it's coming.
You don't know when it's coming and who's the victim. You think about a terrorism attack that's happened in your lifetime. What is different about the victims than you? They just happen to be there, right? So you can almost imagine that happening to you. And that makes it more fun. You are a target just like anybody else, and it can happen anywhere, anyhow. That's why it's so scary. Is it effective, by the way, terror? It might breed terror, it might not get the political goals. But it does breed terror. The problem with this is, I think you probably see it here. The goal why the Germans are doing this is partially to convince, those are the owners, to convince them that their government can't protect them and overthrow their government. But if the Germans bomb your home, who are you going to blame? The Germans. So it might also breed a desire for revenge. In fact, it really breeds a desire for revenge. It doesn't always work. Just by saying these goals does not mean it's effective or smart. It could just be pure desperation. In fact, it almost always is. And so, once we do this, how do we convince people that this is a worthy goal? And it goes two ways. How can we convince people that it is okay to starve civilians at home, to kill children? How do we convince it's okay for us to do that?
Well, you
Hmm?
have to ourselves.
Say what?
How are we gonna be done with the war ourselves?
Going to finish this war, or end. If we don't, what might the enemy do?
Finish things.
Same thing us. We have to be ready to do it to them. Excuse me, to them. And I got this weird cough, and I've had it for like a month and a half. It's like a tickling in my throat. Maybe I'm allergic to you.
Oh, yeah.
We just came in and I coughed. Okay, but how do we take what they do to us? How do we take it? What tool does government use? What tool do they use to get people to be willing to do it to them and to take the sacrifice? Propaganda. Propaganda is the weapon of total war. And so, propaganda, when used by a government, is to promote a certain point of view. Whose point of view? The government. The government's point of view. It might not necessarily be everybody's point of view, but it's the point of view. And it's pretty effective. It's really effective. And think about the 20th century. Oh, first off, so if we're going to make the sacrifice and justify, what we got to breed is hate. Hate the enemy. And what's the most powerful emotion that will get you to hate them? Someone said it, what? Fear. Fear the enemy, you hate the enemy. Find something they fear. Fear breeds hate. Fear. And propaganda is such a good tool. And advertising is propaganda. 20th century would be the golden age of propaganda, because think of all the new technology. By World War I, you can get speakers around very quickly because of trains and cars now. And phones can be used, but also movie theaters. You can show propaganda from the movie. Posters and newspapers. Cheap books can now be produced. Think about by World War II. Not only movies, more movies, but what's the big? TV's almost. TV's invented, but not quite out there. Radio. And think about by Vietnam, 70s, 80s. You got TV. And then think about now. I mean, you're bombarded with propaganda. I mean, just thrown at you from every direction, all the time. And the thing about propaganda, is it the truth? What they're saying might not necessarily be false.
But it's to promote their point of view.
Here's what you got to get. It is always, 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 always misleading. Propaganda, by definition, is misleading. They want you to think a certain thing. And so they're going to emphasize what will help their argument. They might not necessarily avoid the other argument, but they'll always emphasize what they want. It's always misleading, and therefore it's always dishonest. It's always. So what they say might be elements of truth. Exaggerated. Of course they're going to exaggerate it to get people more scared. Oh, when is it the most effective? Oh, that's true. But when you don't know it's propaganda, that's when it's the most effective. When you don't realize it's propaganda, when you can't tell the difference, which is really hard today. You really got to know your stuff to know if it's propaganda. I mean, especially when, what was it right after the shooting in Florida last week at the school, at the high school? Twitter estimates between 12,000 and 20,000 different Russian-controlled bots began to spread disinformation on Twitter, and that's only the ones they know about. And the bots is basically the program to repeat, to look for certain terms and repeat.
They did what? What did they do?
To spread propaganda about the shooting. A combination of, do people who are worried about this might lead to restrictions on guns, that this is a false flag operation. Yeah, that's actually a big spread, that the Obama supporters or Clinton supporters did this. To try to get rid of guns. Oh yeah, that's being spread. No, I mean, that can't be true, but that's what's being spread. Or the opposite, more guns are coming. But the big thing is they're trying to destabilize and panic people. The point is, you don't know if it's propaganda or not. But 12,000 seems like a lot, but I guess all it is just a little mathematical formula, isn't it? So, since no one's doing anything about it, the Russians are like, hey, this is fine. And that's how propaganda works. And by the way, it doesn't have to necessarily be true, because that's ridiculous at that point. Or for this matter, here, is the Kaiser really Beelzebub?
No.
Probably not. I don't know, you know, but discrediting. And look at the numbers. I know it's kind of hard to see, but can you see the numbers? Monthly report murder, babies, children, women, non-combatants. Where do you think they got these numbers?
They made it up.
Just made them up. Virtually everybody knows that's not true. But this propaganda, this is actually in Britain, but think about it for a second. What does that do? Just reinforces the hatred. Oh, sure, that's not true, but we know the Germans do it. We know they are. We just, you know, we know. And it just reinforces that. Same thing here. This is, oh, by the way, it's simple, isn't it? Good propaganda is not complex. It's not nuanced. It's good versus evil, black and white. We good, they bad. Good grammar, that's G-U-D. Here we go. There is a human beast with explicit orders to murder and kill. That's the Kaiser. Who are you for? The fiend or America? Basically, it's to help the American Red Cross, who was the big thing they were doing. Well, blood, but keep it simple. Repeat over and over again. Propaganda is always misleading, but it's very effective. It's very effective. If you can convince enough people to hate Germans, heck, people will police themselves. If you think the Germans are everywhere ready to attack us, who's going to get rid of the Germans? I'll get rid of them. I'm looking around right now. Some of you aren't writing fast enough. Germans. Or actually, I'm only slightly kidding. And we'll get to that kind of attitude. So let's talk about this. This is a British, this is what they give to kids, by the way, Dreadnought. Yes, it's named after the battleship. This be given to kids to get kids all fired up. I mean, think about it. We got to train the next generation of soldiers. We don't know how long the war's going to last. So look what happened here. These are German soldiers, and what are they doing? Escaping British fire in the back. They're carrying wounded British soldiers as human shields so they can escape. Those evil Germans. Now, do you think that's true?
No.
Is that even logical?
No.
Think about it. If you're trying to get away quickly, what are you going to do? I'm going to stop, pick this guy up, and stagger off with a guy on my shoulder. It's reinforced. Okay, that's ridiculous, but
The guy died.
I know they wouldn't want to shoot their own men, but still. Here's another kind of fear. The women of Britain say go. Because if we don't defeat the German, what's going to happen? What's going to happen to them? What's a little country? Poor little country. Oh, gee, what happened to them there? Are you going to protect the women of Britain? The U.S. did the same thing, and I'll show you. It also implies one more thing. Young men, another fear young men might have. If you don't go, those women won't like you. And you will be alone. You'd be shocked how much they use that. Okay, here's a good one. Okay, most people knew that Germany was not a beast bigger than the earth.
Are you sure?
Because I think they would have won. But bloody hands, and look at all the blood going all over the Eastern Hemisphere because of Germany.
That's just a giant.
Well, the question mark means, what will happen? Are you going to let this happen? What is the result if we don't stop this? By the way, what country is that propaganda for? To go fight the Germans? What country? Look at the globe. What country? It's closer.
Australia.
Hmm? Australia would fight for the British right there. If it's for France, would they just show Europe? And if it's for the United States, would they show the Atlantic towards the East Coast? But they had to get Australia in the map. So that's why they're in there. The blood is coming towards them. If we don't stop them in Europe, and that's what this is for the United States Army. Enlist in the Army. Another one is a mad brute. They're not subtle, are they? That could be Lady Columbia or just an American woman. It's not hiding what the implication is. But here's what's important. Oh, first off, do you see it? See the club? What's it say? German civilization. Remember? Just a club. Culture. And what's this in the background? What's the water? What's this? It says America here. That's Europe, destroyed, and now it's across the Atlantic. If we don't stop them there, we're next. Now that's totally unrealistic, exaggerating the threat, but our test is back. And so, that's actually a pretty good one. I mean, just, hey, we don't stop them there. I love the culture. That is clever. Here's another one. What German weapon does that knife, the bloody arm, represent? U-boat. German submarine sinking ships without warning, killing civilians. Clever, isn't it? The bloody knife. Are we going to let that happen? Here's another one. It says there, Huns, it looks like kill, but it's kill women and children. Once again, what, where, doesn't matter. Just reinforce. Get that out there. And what's he going to do when he read that? Yeah, taking off his civilian clothes and join the Marines. Pretty good posters. But the idea is reinforce that hate. And it don't have to be realistic. That's not the point. Just get it out there. And by the way, does annoying work? Yeah, it sticks in your head. You know, why do they, commercials are annoying, repeat the same slogan over and over again? Think about wonderful pop-up ads when you're on the internet.
Some of the slogans you see in here are so bad.
On purpose. Oh, they're horrible, but you remember them. All we have to do is get just some kind of something to stick in your head, something that will stick. The big lie. So we're going to jump right to, it's no coincidence. Once you breed this hate against others, every country in total war, during and afterwards, there'll be xenophobia. What's a xenophobia? Fear of the outsiders, fear of somebody from outside the country, and the growth of nativism. Every time. Because here's the thing. Once you get the propaganda up in hate and fear, it just isn't like after the war, all of a sudden it's like, okay, problem solved, we're all buddies again. No. The hate lingers and looks for other outlets. Hey, sometimes hate's easier than other emotions. You don't have to think. You hate. And so, this is after the Civil War. Anti-Irish and German immigrants. What war is this during? World War II. This is after World War I. Talking about dangerous, radical immigrants from Eastern Europe and the Soviet Union who were Bolsheviks. And this is after Iraq and what happened in Syria. This is just 2 years ago. The United States hardly let any Syrian refugees in, but there was a great fear of Syrian refugees. And a war that we helped to start, civil war there, is going to breed some kind of, or terrorist act. This is ISIS on Trojan horse reference. And I'm not arguing about policy here. What I'm arguing is, what I'm telling you is, after every war, there's nativism, there's growth. There's growth of xenophobia. Every single time. It's no coincidence that the Klan reemerged after it died during Reconstruction. It reemerged, mostly outside the South, after World War I. And it wasn't just African-American, it was anti-Semitic, anti-Catholic, anti-foreign influence, especially anti-Bolshevik. It's no coincidence. The Klan will have its greatest power in the 1920s. There's a cost to total war. It's pretty big. By the way, what's going to happen after the first and second one? A Red Scare. Fear of communist insurgents. You might have heard of McCarthyism. So, here's another big thing. What does winning look like? What does losing look like? That's actually a big question. Okay, we're not talking the battlefield now. We're talking total war. How do we know if we're winning or losing? How do you know you're winning? Or more importantly, how do you know if the enemy is? Remember I told you about Germany. What was going on in 1918? 1918, I showed that soup kitchen. What? Food riots. Where was the revolution? Russia. Overthrew the government. Here's the thing. How do we know if disagreement with the political structure? Let me rephrase that. You just don't like the president. You think the president's policy is bad. You think Congress's policy is bad. Is that political discourse or is the enemy winning?
Depends on what the enemy wants.
Yes.
It also depends on who you are.
Yes.
And here's the thing. It's important to understand. War is a political decision. Politics in a constitutional republic has to have open debate, a freedom of the press. You have to be able to make decisions on who you will elect as your leaders, even though half the population couldn't vote in the teens. But still, it's a political decision. Every country who entered the war or stayed in the war did it by politics. The United States entered on a political decision. What if there is dissent against that political decision? What if people oppose that? So the United States entered the war in 1917. And what if people say, that was totally wrong? And then 2 months later, the United States passed the Conscription Act to draft people into the army. And you say that is totally wrong. That is a bad political move. Congress never should have voted that. And in 1918, I am going to vote and work to elect people who will get us out of this war. Is that political discourse in a republic? Or are the Germans winning? To the elected government, it looks like what? Germany is winning. Every country in total war, once they hit that stage of going to this, we're all-out war, a war for your very survival, what do they ban?
Free speech.
Yeah. Freedom of speech, freedom of assembly, freedom of press.
Let's do that.
Exactly. The Espionage Act. Why did they pass the Espionage Act? I gave you that. It's important law. Why did they pass it? Because of things like this. People were speaking out against the law that started conscription. And they didn't want people to fight conscription. They wanted young men to go willingly. Every country in time of war bans freedom of speech. And who does it silence? If you're a German spy and you're in the country spying, oh sure, you might be kind of encouraging some dissent. But how are you going to act in public?
Like,
Are you going to try to have an American flag and walk around with it to convince people you're not the enemy? Yet, what did the Espionage Act ban? Public displays that might help the enemy. And who decides what a public display is? Who does this silence? It silences people in your own country so they don't go against the war. They're not going to stop a spy. Spy's a spy. They know. You don't need a law to know. If you're caught spying in wartime, you can be executed. They know that. The Espionage Act wasn't to stop spies. The Espionage Act was to shut people up and not complain about the war. Because think about it for a second. Who in here would be willing to act that might send you to prison for 20 years? What kind of people will? That means the only people talking would be the most radical. Last thing, I forgot to add this. How do you know then somebody is speaking out against the war? What do you need in your own country? Huh? Every country, once they enter total war, what do they get? What do they call spies in their own country? We have a name for it. Secret police. Yeah, I wonder what's going to be created during the war. It's going to be called the Bureau of Investigation, but soon called the FBI. Every country does it. It's kind of a big deal.
I have to rewrite it. Sebastian, so looking over that
Oh,
like, oh,
okay.
spies. There's.
Okay.
It's freezing.
Not that.
Speak for yourself.
All right, clear out, people. Gonna watch The Untouchable. It's a movie about no, The Untouchable. It's about Al Capone.
You wanted to tell me about
Okay, come here, follow me. Is that the assignment? Put it in the basket.
Is it 2 years as a whole or so at Home Depot?
Yeah, sort of.
Like the wood department of Home Depot.
80 Tillinger. Hayden, it is still on.
I say.
I just have one.
Hey, Hayden. In my room.
This is all messing up.
Wasn't expecting that. That's good.
Probably not.
Follow me.
Are you using the hat? Yes. Yes, Tony.
Yes.
He's always here.
Now I see it. By the way, behind the flag.
I put this a couple months ago.
Are you using the ACT hat?
No, so I went to the study session thing for Mickey here.
It's like Christ.
Now for different
Yeah, they give you this. Look through the time you're on about time.
No, because I just want to.
So then the pre-purpose will go here.
You're free.
We're gonna get no, I did week course. We're doing about library.
Why are you doing
Yeah.
one of the
And
light
then prescribe with the library, like to Lewis and Clark.
Yeah. And what you gotta do, well, three of them. you gotta do.
Lewis,
Three of them. Six of them. You gotta show what's in the document. And look a little bit here about. I know you got the pieces, but I got a little bit of picture. I'll see it. All right, everybody.
Why do I feel like
I feel I'm like Chester A. Arthur. He changes pants every 5 minutes. I change my shirt every 5 minutes.
I honestly felt like you had a white shirt with red stripes on today.
Nope.
Marcus, that poster's not for once.
Yes, that was spontaneous.
Okay.
Emma, my crony.
Oh, yeah.
Where were you? No. Were you gonna? You guys need to quit. And I have to give you a track with Stevie too. Let's go. You're presenting right now.
Hey, Delaney, we love the set.
We love the set.
Presenting again.
We love the set.
You always present.
Presented set.
Okay, so First thing is first, we have a couple more presentations, and then who was gone yesterday? Raise your hand. There are a few of you who skipped. Medical purposes. No. Just have to take this home and show it.
Oh, really?
Yes.
My dad goes, can you buy 5 off?
It's actually, despite Kevin Costner. I don't know. Oh, and no, and you were here yesterday. What am I doing? You just skipped first period. I'm sorry, John. And all right. So I believe, oh, Grace. All right, so
Yes, right.
chest strap. Don't get strep throat. I've actually never had one.
I'm so excited.
I'm immune to it.
I don't have a throat.
I don't think that
So you, because you've already had Al Capone, so we're gonna do, so you have to do Bugs Moran, because you skipped yesterday for medical purposes.
You do not see on the power
This
side.
is the prohibition old boys meeting, so.
Just send it to the group.
Yeah. These doctors must never quit. That's all they do. All right. So, and no, really, Grace does have straps on.
And then they have to do a strap and they stick that thing down your throat. And then you just.
Great.
That's the fun part.
Yes, that's the fun part. All right, so we have one more presentation.